You can do magic with your own two hands.
Greetings, travelers. I'm your host, the C-Dot that knows a lot, Dr. Waluigi. After the release of Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night, Filmation wasted no time in preparing to release their next big-budget movie for an early summer release. Unfortunately, not only did the West not get the movie for a long while, but this led to Filmation's eventual downfall and having them close their doors forever. This is my review of Filmation's Happily Ever After.
You can do magic.
As I stated last time, this was the second movie of the Filmation's new classics collection, and was planned to be released in 1989, 2 years after they released Pinocchio to theaters. Unfortunately, this was not meant to be. Well, kind of. The movie was delayed due to the lawsuit by Disney, which they won, forcing Filmation to make several changes to the movie, including changing the title, the villain, and replacing the dwarves, which I'll talk about in a moment. But after everything, the movie was eventually released in 1989 in the Philippines. Yeah, this movie wasn't released to North America until May 28th of 1993. Apparently this was released at the same time as Disney re-released their version of Snow White to theaters, so maybe the theater companies planned to release this movie as part of a weird double feature? But anyway, this led to Filmation having to file for bankruptcy and sold all of their library to L'Oreal. Yes, the rights to the entire Filmation library were sold off to a shampoo company. While it does suck that Filmation had to file for bankruptcy, there is some good that has come out in recent years. DreamWorks now owns a majority of the Filmation library, which is ironic considering Jeffrey Katzenberg was the one who sent the lawsuit that closed Filmation down, but later became one of the major heads of DreamWorks. It has released new He-Man and She-Ra shows to varying degree of quality, which I do hope that this will lead to more reboots of other classic Filmation shows like Brave Star or even their version of the Ghostbusters. I know that seems foolhardy, but hey, I've heard of Stranger Things getting a reboot.
You can do magic.
The movie follows Snow White and Prince Charming going to invite the seven dwarves to their wedding. However, the brother of the evil queen, Lord Malice, seeks revenge upon Snow White after he learns that she inadvertently killed his sister by trying to kill Snow White. But she escapes and runs into the cousins of the seven dwarves, the seven dwarf elves, who go to try and help Snow White rescue the prince. Can they rescue Prince Charming, or will they be captured by Lord Malice and be trapped forever in the realm of doom?
You can do magic.
Much like Pinocchio, the cast of this movie does star some pretty famous 80s and 90s actors. However, I find that this movie's cast does feel like both an upgrade and a downgrade compared to Pinocchio. On the one hand, you had James Earl Jones do his amazing, commanding, and downright terrifying voice as the main villain in Pinocchio. In this movie, however, we got the goofy and flamboyant voice of Malcolm McDowell playing the evil queen's brother, Lord Malice. Now don't get me wrong, I like Malcolm McDowell in a lot of the movies and TV shows he's in, but he doesn't come off as a threat here and acts more like Skeletor or Hordak in comparison. The other major downgrade was the inclusion of the villainous sidekicks. Ed Asner and Frank Welker return as Scowl and Batso, two of the most pointless and annoying characters in this movie. How annoying are they? Not only do they have annoying catchphrases, but they also have the first song of the movie, which is the equivalent of the second and fourth songs of Return of Jafar, which were sung by Gilbert Gottfried, rest in peace. However, I find that the rest of the cast are the better half of the movie. I like the actors they got for the Dwarf Elves, as many of them are played by actors I grew up watching, like Zsa Zsa Gabor, Linda Gary, and Carol Channing, and I will say that one of the minor villains I liked was the Magic Mirror, who was voiced by Dom DeLuise, since he is the snarkiest character in the group. Plus he did end up helping the heroes at the end of the movie. Finally, Irene Cara as Snow White does her job well for the role she was given, but she doesn't stand out that much compared to the other actors, as she had only one other acting role under her belt, and that was a minor character in the movie Fame. I wouldn't call this movie's cast terrible, but compared to Pinocchio, that movie does outshine it for having a smaller number of characters, and ones that do enough to make them stand out. But that doesn't mean that there isn't anything good in this movie.
You can do magic.
While I feel that Pinocchio had a better cast, this movie does at least do two things better in comparison. The first are the background designs. In my opinion, one of the things that Pinocchio lacked were the backgrounds. The backgrounds weren't as interesting or as stand out compared to the other works Filmation had made over the years. The only time I felt like the backgrounds were spectacular was at the end of the movie with the Empire of the Night. Happily Ever After, however, has some pretty and vibrant backgrounds that I remember more than anything in Pinocchio. The standout backgrounds are when the characters either go to Mother Nature's home or the Realm of Doom. The second is the pacing. This movie feels like a great adventure with many suspenseful moments and not dragging out the story just to sell a new toy, or worse yet, a new television series that honestly no one would watch.
You can do magic.
Though this movie does have better pacing and backgrounds, it doesn't make up for the other problems that are in this movie. I mentioned how annoying most of the minor villain characters are, but man are the minor hero characters useless. One of the things that the movie explains is that the Dwarf Elves work for Mother Nature, voiced by Phyllis Diller, which means that they help maintain the balance of the Earth by Mother Nature giving them their different abilities. You know, having control over Earth, water, the sun, etc. Except that the only one who even uses their powers in the entire movie is the one who has trouble controlling her power. Yeah, the rest of the group either just stand around or have to trick and outsmart the dumb minions of the villain. Look, I get that they wanted to show off the Dwarf Elves working together and not needing their powers in order to win, but when the person you're going up against is a villain that can shapeshift and has a batch of magical artifacts, maybe using your ability to cause a fucking earthquake or summon a fucking tidal wave might be useful in this situation. Another problem is that this movie has much more obvious repetitive animation, which is something that Filmation is known for, but considering this was a theatrical movie, it does feel like they should have tried a little more for a movie that's being released to theaters. The final thing that this movie doesn't do as well as Pinocchio are the songs. This movie has the same number of songs as Pinocchio, but instead of having 3 good songs, this movie only has 1 song that I like, but it's not a very good song. I like the singer and the composition of the song is good, but it has really bad lyrics, so I end up listening to it as an instrumental song. It's weird how the movie that's based on one of my favorite fairy tale movies is being outdone by one of my least favorite fairy tale movies.
You can do magic.
It's hard for me to say that this is a good movie. With the repetitive animation, annoying characters, and inferior songs, this should be a movie I consider one of the worst things Filmation ever made. But I do find myself coming back to it occasionally. Even though it's not as good as Pinocchio, I do think that Happily Ever After has a charm to it that makes it worth rewatching, and apparently others think so too, as it did end up getting a cult following, as well as 2 DVD releases. Overall, I give Happily Ever After a 5 out of 10. Even though it's just a middle-of-the-road kind of movie, I do still find it a road worth traveling. Thanks for watching, I'm Dr. Waluigi, and remember, don't judge a book by its cover, cause you'll never know what's inside. Good night, everyone.
You can do magic with your own 2 hands. You can touch the clouds right where you stand. You can see rainbows